Hello, I'm Phil Rickaby, the host and producer of Stageworthy. If you're watching on YouTube, click the subscribe button, like this video, and if you're so inclined, leave a comment. You can also click the little bell icon that will make sure that you are notified every time a new episode of this podcast is released. If you're listening to the audio version, whether you're listening on the Stageworthy website or wherever else, if you haven't already, make sure that you are subscribed to this podcast. Go to the podcast in the app that you're listening to, click the little follow or subscribe button, and then every time I drop a new episode, it will be downloaded directly to your device, and so you will never miss an episode of this show. I want to talk a little bit about my Patreon. I am only able to do this show because of the patrons who've decided that they believe enough in this show that they want to back it. I could not be making this show without them. Patrons of this podcast get to see episodes early. We will have discussions about what's coming up. Especially if I'm looking at topics that I want to cover, important issues that we maybe want to talk about. And as more people join and as this podcast goes on, there will be more perks available. It's a very affordable back. You can back the podcast for a monthly fee of $7 Canadian. So just please consider that. If you like this podcast and you want to help me keep making it, please become a backer on Patreon by going to patreon.com/stageworthy. My guests this week are Amanda Lynn and Julia Dickson. They are the co-leadership team of the Paprika Theatre Festival, which is now in its 24th season. This year, Paprika made some big changes to the way that they program. They are implementing a way of working that prioritizes the well-being of artists and preventing burnout for both the staff and the artists, which is an important conversation. And we will get into that in this conversation about burnout and how artists often work themselves so hard that they do risk burning out. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you do too. Here's my conversation with the Paprika Theatre Festival leadership, Julia Dickson and Amanda Lynn. Just to jump right in, Amanda and Julia, you are both the co-leaders of the Paprika Theatre Festival. Which of you would like to give the elevator pitch about what the Paprika Theatre Festival is?
Do you want to go for it, Julia? You prepared all of our notes.
Yeah, I did the backstory there. Yeah, sure. So Paprika, we're a youth-led professional performing arts organization. But sort of our shtick, what makes us unique is that it's a place where emerging artists and arts administrator get to really lead the charge at really doing everything involved with the beginning to end of putting on a performing arts festival. The way that we do that is that we offer these paid training opportunities, mentorships, hands-on, mentorships and guest artist sessions in order for folks to really get hands-on training in professional experience in the performing arts. So that's really the long and short of what Paprika is up to. We offer 6 training programs. They're offered on a biannual basis. So this year we're offering the Creators Unit, the Creative Producers Program, as well as the Indigenous Arts Program. And then next season we flip and we will offer the Directors Lab, the Design Lab, and the Playwrights Unit, as well as the Indigenous Arts Program, since it's a 2-year program. So what's really special is that we bring these artists in quite earlier on in a process than you maybe would in a traditional theater environment, with the idea that folks are not just creating work for this festival that happens each year in May, but also for the purpose of getting to workshop alongside professionals and peers and other creatives to really get some professional development in their area of choice before getting to showcase every year in May. And that's what we do.
Julia, you've been doing this particular role for 5 years with the Paprika Theatre Festival. Amanda, this is your first year as a co-lead. And the last time you and I spoke, you were a writer and performer getting ready to do your show Between a Walk and a Hot Plate. Mm-hmm. What made you want to go the direction of theater administration and get your feet wet there?
It's so funny because I feel like sometimes I'm waking up from sleepwalking and I'm like, how did I get here? But I think I probably talked about this with you last time I was here. I became a writer because that was the thing I could do that nobody was asking me to. And I think when it comes to theater admin, I first got into it because that was like where people would pay me to do things. So it's not like the most interesting story, but the reason that I stuck around is because I find I actually quite like exercising that part of my brain in terms of like problem solving, like getting to support someone else's creative process. And a lot of my most joyous theater experiences have been in facilitation. So, and I feel like that's a lot of what I bring to Paprika is getting to create like a container for artists alongside Julia, getting to create this container for people to thrive and get to try new things and make mistakes. And so that was kind of what drew me towards this role, which I actually had an eye on for a while. And then the timing was right. I started in July of last year, and it's been great so far.
I mean, I think I want to talk a little bit more about the challenges of arts administration in a little
Mm,
bit. Um, and it's always, I think administration is something that those of us on the creative side are often a little wary of, a little reluctant to take on, even though it's such an important thing. Uh, Julia, on the other hand, you've been with Paprika for 5 years. What has kept you in this role with one company for that long?
Yeah, it's actually an interesting question because if you compare, myself in this position to like arts administrators and companies like across Canada, it's pretty, not unusual for folks to stick around and like kind of solidify themselves with a company and in a role for a while, especially when you're looking at things from an arts administration side. When you're at the helm leading a company, I even just being in only year 5 of working with this organization, there's been so many vast differences from year 1 to year 5 that I am really grateful that I got to see through. And, so many things that I've learned through that process of both like overseeing and running things when Kesha was the artistic producer and now actually working in tandem with Amanda, even that period of transitioning and, now saying, oh, it's the same company, it's the same values, it's the same mandate, but also the people have changed. Year over year, people move in and out, and that challenge of making sure that the bones, the structure of something stays the same. I don't think that it would have been so meaningful of an opportunity, and I don't think I would have learned nearly so much if I had been hopping about so much.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right that in a lot of cases, people do stick with a leadership role in a company for a long time. I think that where I sort of got caught up is the fact that in a lot of cases, when people are considered emerging arts administrators, they tend to last for maybe a 6-month contract there, a year-long contract here, and then that's over and they move on to something else. But this is something entirely different. What makes the Paprika Theatre Festival different in that way?
Honestly, a lot of it has to do with the company itself and really the types of people that it brings together. The type of work that I'm doing, it's the type of work that I could be doing with all sorts of other arts organizations. But Paprika really is one of those places that once you're in it, it's kind of hard to want to give it up. Like it's actually it's kind of cheesy, but there's like a magic associated with being in a room full of a lot of folks who really haven't had necessarily a super deep ingrained preconceived notion of theater. This is how you do it. This is what performance is like. This is what you do in a dance environment. Instead, are getting to really be at the helm for the first time. And so, to a certain extent, they're able to say, hey, I want things to look differently than I saw them in theater school. I want people to be treated differently than they were treated elsewhere, without that same sort of like being bogged down by like, oh, I've been like, I've gone through it. I've seen how it works out. More willing to try. It's also, you know, bigger possibility for failure, of course, associated with that. But I think that's the sort of magic that's kept me more interested and ingrained at seeing through that side of things at the admin level.
I think that, it's interesting you mentioned the freedom to fail, which I think is something that we listen, my experience is in the Toronto theater scene, but we are not very encouraging of failure. We even sometimes the Fringe Festival is like, no, this better be polished, this better be good. It's not. We don't really give the freedom to fail quite so often. And so it's interesting to have that in this environment. Amanda, what is did you have a relationship or did you work with Paprika in the past? Or what is it, we sort of like alluded to it, but specifically, what is it that drew you to this role and to Paprika?
Well, I my first interaction with Paprika was applying to the director's lab when I was like 1 year out of university, and I got an interview, but I did not get it. And that was a little bit unfortunate. But I ended up that year coming back and participating as one of the actors for the playwrights unit. So that was kind of my first interaction with Paprika. And the whole way through, like I felt like treated with a lot of kindness and respect in a way that you don't always get when you're an emerging artist. There's often this feeling of like needing to prove yourself or needing to be kind of like the smallest in the room. And I never felt that at Paprika. So it was like one of the companies that made me feel like I have a space here in the theater scene. And then past that, I'd like always been a supporter of Paprika. Like I'd come to a couple of festivals and fundraisers and all that, and I'd always been following and supporting from behind the scenes. But the main way that I started getting more involved with the company was last year when Kesha and Julia brought me on to be the associate festival producer. And that was honestly great because it gave me like I wasn't sure about wanting to apply to the artistic producer role until I had experienced the full festival for myself. And I got to be around like working with the artists. I got to see Kesha behind the scenes, like planning the community programming, and then like actually being at the festival and witnessing the like magic that Julia is talking about. And you're right. Like I think in the Toronto theater scene, it's quite hard to to feel like you can make mistakes or to do something that's less than perfect. But I feel like the audiences at Paprika and the artists, like the environment is just very encouraging of like people trying something new. And that was really incredible to like watch a show and then see everyone's loved ones and like colleagues come up and celebrate them. So that was like the kind of environment that I knew I wanted to stick around in.
Now, Julia, when you brought on Amanda as in an associate role, was this part of a nefarious plan to get her to apply for the role?
It wasn't not nefarious. I'll, I'll say that. The one of the interesting things, especially when it comes to arts leadership, is that there aren't actually a lot of footholds, if you think about it, in this industry for being like, okay, you actually are an artist, you're just doing your thing, and then suddenly you need to run a full-on arts company. Maybe you start your own, maybe you're excited to do that, but then how do you actually figure out how to do it? And so when we were sitting there thinking about the fact that we knew that Kesha was going to be leaving at the end of the season, because we did know that like long before it came out, it was part of a larger organizational plan there. But we knew that we needed to hire an associate producer, and so obviously there was a certain aspect of okay, who's going to be both a healthy support to the festival, somebody who's going to like fit in that role in that environment, but also to a certain extent like fit Paprika. Like that's often a lot of the things that we think about is like are you a Paprika person? And really being a Paprika person is like, are you kind? Are you welcoming? Are you going to be supportive? Are you going to like be willing to like take a chance and get scrappy a little bit with it? And so really there's a certain amount of like trying to find the right person who fits that vibe. And then hopefully, maybe that's a foothold that leads to something more. Neither Kesha nor I had any say in the executive hiring. So we just went out with a hope and a dream of welcoming.
Well, obviously, it worked. That hope and that dream did exactly what you wanted it to do. One of the things that I think we should address is the changes to Paprika's programming this year and the reason for them. And in doing so, we need to talk about burnout for artists. So, Amanda, why don't you describe what the change to the programming is this year?
So Paprika, as Julia mentioned, runs 6 programs. And in the past, that has been 6 programs per year. So 6 different disciplines, 6 different facilitators. The programs it ranged a lot, but last year it had between 2 to 4 people. So it was a pretty large group. And my understanding, Julia, correct me if I'm wrong, is that this kind of grew over time, that the people at Paprika wanted to keep supporting more folks, like expanding, like bringing more people in. And that was all great, but it didn't necessarily match the growth of the organizational capacity. So that just meant that a lot of the people at Paprika were doing a lot more with the same amount of resources and the same amount of hours, which did lead to a culture of burnout that, like, I'm sure is definitely not unique to Paprika. Like, a lot of people who work in the arts are familiar with that feeling of like, oh, well, I love it, so I'm just going to put in a couple of extra hours that are unpaid, or like, I love it, so I will like not take a vacation even though like I'm really needing it. So the program changes came out of a strategic planning process that was kind of trying to address this capacity issue. And I also want to say that although I've spent a lot of time talking about the program changes this year, they were not like something that I was involved in making. That credit goes completely to Julia and Kesha, to the board of directors, which has changed a little bit since right now. So if I can send you a list later, Phil, of the people, but um, so that, and then also the currents group who did the strategic planning process. So now the switch is that Paprika is running 3 programs per year, as Julia mentioned, and they rotate out biannually. So we run 3 programs one year, 3 programs another year. And in that way, we're not having to stop offering any of the programs. Like, it's not like, oh, we're canceling the director's lab or the playwrights unit. But it has really allowed the staff to not only be able to like do their jobs in a way that's a little bit like less stressful, but also has allowed us to plan for the future, has allowed us to cover for like any personal or life needs that come up in a way that's like, I think, really great. Like allowing us to be more caring with everybody. Because as much as like we all say we want to care for people and we want to take our time, like when resources get thin, it's very easy for that to go out the window. So I think this is a really important move in terms of Paprika, like standing by the values that we have.
Julia, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, just to, also give credit where credit is due. I think that there's definitely been like definitely long before Kesha and I were at the helm of Paprika, there has been sort of a work and knowledge of like the folks at Paprika who came before to try to make some shifts and changes to what was going on in Paprika. Because it's not a problem that came up overnight, it's one of those things that you can really notice how lockdowns and pandemic restrictions really like exacerbated a lot of the problems, but they were there beforehand. And in fact, I think it actually speaks a lot more to the ways that like the Paprika and the programming changed and started to realize how it needed to be responsive to emerging artists. Because actually, unlike what Amanda said, Paprika actually used to be much bigger. Like there used to be like cohorts of like 50 artists coming through and then doing Paprika's programs. But that was at a time where Paprika was actually, although it was like a professional training ground, it was not a professional development program in the same way. Folks weren't being paid for their time. They were being told, it's great. You have the opportunity to be here. And honestly, it was kind of really exciting in a lot of ways for the time, because the alternative was, okay, spend thousands of dollars and go into debt to go into a conservatory program, right? Like there at the time, there was a lot of still like Paprika has been kind of like pushing the boundaries pretty consistently throughout its 25-year tenure. But, as our understanding of like what emerging artists need to thrive and survive also has changed. So too has Paprika, and it's been responsive. We've called back on programming and started offering honorariums and paid support. Previously, it was a little bit more fringe style, where you wouldn't get a production budget. You would just get the opportunity to be showcased, but also learn alongside the showcase opportunity. But if you wanted to bring in collaborators, yeah, they were your friends and they were probably not getting paid at the end of the project, right? And the Paprika folks before me and before us, the many leaders of that have come before us, had realized that they were like, no, this is like something that needs to shift. This needs to change. But what was difficult was that it had really been built in this structure that was like really perpetuated on a lot of free labor, not just for the artists coming in, but like the staff that were doing it were also really, really chronically underpaid for the amount of hours and work that they were putting in. And a lot of that was kind of seen as okay because they're emerging. They're paying their dues. It's fine if they can't afford to pay their bills because, they'll get to pay the bills like from the next opportunity that they get after they do Paprika. Whether or not that actually happens for them is another question. And so, there was definitely a lot of work being done to try to like shift and change the way Paprika was operating. It just maybe wasn't happening fast enough. is what we
Yeah.
realized.
It's an interesting question because burnout is a real thing. And I think especially in the arts administration field, because like Amanda was saying, you're in the arts, you love the arts, so you put in the extra hours, and there's in some cases, almost an unspoken expectation that you'll put in some extra time because you love the arts, you're doing this thing, and it almost, and for the amount that people are often being paid as arts administrators, especially an emerging arts administrator, like you're saying, that's not nearly enough. And I think that's the kind of thing that ultimately eventually leads us to losing our best and brightest arts administrators to business, to the corporate sector, because there they can get vacation and they're not expected to work extra hours. Like that kind of thing can be attractive. And so we're kind of putting our arts administrators on the line to leave us uh, to save a few bucks and to get a bit more out of them. So kudos to Paprika for like recognizing that and to making some changes in that way. Is that, I mean, Julie, you've been doing this for 5 years. Um, do you have a sense for yourself of the difference between how the organization, being an arts administrator prior to this change and after this change?
I can definitely notice a pretty stark difference almost immediately. It it was that same thing that Amanda was talking about, especially also when you're at the helm of an organization like this, you see, a lot of folks counting on you to a certain extent, especially when you're on, all the aspects of it come down to whether or not you can raise enough money, whether or not things get done on time, whether or not, all of these deadlines and things are met. So it can become really easy to just say, hey, sure, I'll work those extra hours and I'll make sure that these things get done because it's also important to me that like I do a good job and that everyone gets, better compensated for their work. Like these are values that I have and hold and want to see it get done. And it's a really stark difference to know that you're doing that and then be in almost a opposite position where you're like, oh my goodness, I actually have extra hours to like think about what the nature of this company is. What does it need? How can we modify our systems and the ways that we're doing things to make it better rather than kind of always feeling like you're in this hamster wheel of, okay, we just got to keep going. We just got to keep going and maybe I'll get off at, in the next 5 minutes and it's not done. Okay, maybe I'll give myself another 5 minutes, having that difference of time to actually think, how can we be strategic about our plans? How can we actually grow and think about future seasons rather than just what's happening right immediately? It's been pretty stark already.
Yeah, that hamster wheel. I love that. I love the analogy, and I think I've used that a long time ago in the past, especially during the pandemic, the hamster wheel of production, and the stoppage during the pandemic. I had hoped would be an opportunity to do a little bit of like theater navel gazing and have everybody sort of like come out with like, I don't know, more enlightened whatever. And then very quickly, a lot of times that doesn't happen because the hamster wheel starts up again. Um, Now, before we get into talking about the festival and some specifics about shows that are at the festival and that you're excited about, I wanted to ask you about the fact that this is not the first time that the two of you have worked together. You guys met at university and worked on student productions together. So, what's it like? Sort of like refinding each other in this setting as opposed to the theater school setting.
It, like, honestly doesn't feel that different for me. I don't know if you would agree, Julia. And I remember that feeling of, like, first graduating from school and, like, going out and expecting everything to feel different now that you're a professional and realizing that it's, like, it's the same things except, like, I guess it's a little bit more money. We also started on, like, a similar working relationship, I feel like, where I think you and I complement each other's skills well.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think it's actually also really interesting because a lot of the times when you think about like learning environments, when you think about like the universities or the Paprikas or the other emerging artist programs of it all, you expect for it to change or be different when you're in this professional environment, just because I don't know, maybe there's an expectation that it's going to be different, more professional, more sturdy, more rigid. I don't know. But in fact, it actually feels really lovely and calm, like returning to like the thing that made me excited to do this type of work in the first place. Like it was fun in school. Like I was doing it because I wanted to. It was a volunteer
Mhm.
job at that point. Now it's like, wow, I get to do that type of stuff that I really enjoyed doing then with Amanda. And we're just back at it again. That's
Yeah, I always had the feeling that we
Nice.
were gonna, like, work together again at some point, and it almost happened at one point, like, right
it was
before
close.
COVID, and then it didn't, so we're back now, so we made it.
There's so many like almost stories about COVID, like just like
Yeah.
that particular much that is now just over 5 years ago. If like I,
Whoa.
which kind of blows my mind that it's 5 years to like March was the time when that was happening, and like so many almosts that were interrupted by that period. I do want to ask because Amanda, the last time you were here, as I mentioned, we were talking about between a walk and a hot pot. I
Mhm.
keep saying hot plate, I think, and it's hot pot.
It's all good,
Ugh,
similar
so
enough.
dumb. It's not. They're very different things. Um, but your show, between a walk and a hot pot, um, premiered at Cahoots Theater and received 6 Dora nominations.
Mhm.
Um, so congratulations on the Dora nominations.
Thank
But
you.
how does that Dora nomination process uh change how you see the Toronto and the Canadian theater scene? What's that experience like?
I mean, I guess it's hard to tell what has opened a door in some ways. Like, I have gotten a couple of successful grants since that play, and I've mentioned that the play was nominated. Um, but honestly, while I, like, was very grateful to be, recognized, and that was a really, like, I think that was a really celebratory night for me, just getting to, like, see the team again. Like, we had been spending so much time together in January, and then in, like, June or whenever the doors happened, it was really great to see everyone again. I do think that, like, I yeah, I think the doors are great and that it's important to be able to celebrate art, but I also think at the end of the day, it's like 5 people's on the jury decided they like your play, so I take it with a bit of a grain of salt. So I don't think that it's, like, shifted how I feel as an artist necessarily. And I think that it's been, like, working with everyone at Paprika, it's been really cool to get to see them, like, creating work and sometimes getting recognized and sometimes not. But in general, I think my main focus is just, like, getting to support this new work happening. And hopefully, if it can open doors for me to, like, get more of my work happening, that would be great too. But it's also I'm sure that Julia and you, Phil, both know the struggle of trying to, like, do arts administration and also write. Like, I've been trying to write. I've had it, like, on my calendars for Friday, and every single week, I'm like, I don't feel like it right now."
It's so hard. It's
Yeah.
so hard to like finish a day of work and go, now I'm gonna be
Yeah.
creative. And sometimes you just don't feel like it.
Yeah, but honestly, there's nothing that's been, like, more inspiring than getting to, like, watch other people create. Like, I think sometimes you need to take a step away from your own process, like, see how other people are doing it, and, like, it'll always be there for me. I will go back to writing in the moment, and if you're the OAC listening to this, I am definitely writing right now, and
but it's interesting because what saying like seeing people create is very inspiring. I find that about most festivals. Like if I want to get inspired to like do something, to write something, to create something, the period around the Fringe Festival, for example, is like extremely inspiring.
Mhm.
Seeing shows at the Paprika Festival is like inspiring. You come away feeling so just like, oh, there's so much creative energy. It's hard. You just want to use it. And so I think that it's a great opportunity for anybody who I don't know if you're feeling kind of stagnant, go see shows at a festival and it's so awesome. Um Now speaking of the festival, are there shows, and I mean unfair to ask you to choose a show to say this is the one I'm looking forward to because of course you're looking forward to all of the shows. Are there shows at top of mind that you're thinking like this one is the one that people need to see?
Oh, it's like being asked to pick a favorite child.
I know exactly what I'm doing. It's cruel and it's not fair, but I'm asking it anyway.
The thing that's also hard is that, like, Paprika is unlike other companies in that we don't pick the artists based on the show, and we actually haven't seen any of the shows yet. Although we did in our one of our most recent training days, we had the whole company together and we did a little show and tell, which was very fun. We got to see like what the artists were working on for the festival, and then I also made all the staff show off the talent. So Julia showed us all of the nail art she's been making to show the camera.
My creative output. Yeah. They want this
Nice.
room.
Nice.
And so from those pieces, like from getting to see that, I would say, I mean, maybe we can both pick like something different, and then we'll cover
Yeah. We'll
all of
cover
them.
different bases. I guess if you are a musical theater person, if that is like your cup of tea, like I think that the Paprika Festival is a really exciting opportunity for you because we have two musicals, like premier Canadian musicals, haven't been on the stage before, doing, excerpt workshop bits. And they have like really incredible teams also coming in to work on them. So one of them is Pigs Fly, the Glass musical, emphasis on the
On the
ass,
ass.
and Neptune's with a fish, and they both go in like very different directions in terms of like the context of the musicals that they're talking about. One is really taking a really comedic twist on like the mistreatment of like fat folks, honestly, within like the community, and but really from like this like lovely comedic spin. And one of them is like more like Severance meets Kiki's Delivery Service in terms of the vibe. So like very opposing, but like both beautifully created musicals. So I feel like I've cheated there by listing two. But
No, it's fair. It's fair. I think it's fair. Amanda, you now can list two as well if you would like.
But there's five. That means you're like leaving one person out.
one
I
out.
know, I know, I know. So actually, you know what? If you feel you, I know it's an unfair question that I asked you, so you can actually talk about the three remaining.
Okay, thank you. So there's two pieces that have kind of like a dance movement-y kind of background. So if that's your jam, those shows will definitely be of interest. One of them is Jane Lee's piece called Forget Me Not. Jane Lee is in the Indigenous Arts program and is a choreographer. And she's putting together this very beautiful dance piece that's kind of storytelling about Indigenous resilience and grief and loss. And the pieces that we saw, she showed us some videos of it at this show and tell and was very like, I haven't shown anyone yet. They just learned it like minutes before this video was taken. And it was beautiful. It was like, I mean, I'm not a dancer, so anything in that realm like really blows my mind. But it was incredible. Like, I'm really, really excited to see that. And then the other dance movement piece is the Creators Unit, which is a program of 4 artists that come together and they devise a piece. It's facilitated by Starlight, who's been facilitating the program for Starlight's one half of XLQ, the like pop. I think they call themselves like a pop theater duo. Um, but Starlight's facilitating it and came in very boldly with like, what if we had 500 balloons? And most of the Paprika staff we've learned are scared of balloons popping. So this has been a time of us really learning to conquer our fears. But that's going to be really cool. They've devised a movement, like kind of a physical theater-esque piece. It has different languages in it. It has lots of balloons. And we also will be offering earbuds or earplugs at the door. So if you're like us and scared of balloons, because there will be balloons popping for sure. So that's going to be really exciting. And then the final piece is Illyria McKay, who was actually part of the Paprika Festival last year. This is her year 2 of the Indigenous Arts program. And she's presenting a piece called Homecoming, which is going to be a collection of spoken word poetry. And I'm personally really, really excited for that because unfortunately I missed Illyria's showcase last year. So this will be my opportunity to come back and get to hear it. And I know she's a very, very beautiful writer.
She really is. I can speak to that. I heard it last year and it was incredibly moving and beautiful.
Nice. Now, at what point did you find out about 500 balloons? Like, and it sounds Now, first off, that's a lot of balloons, and I hope nobody is manually blowing up those balloons because that is a lot of work.
There's a lot of manual
Yeah.
pumping anyway
Yes.
happening.
Yeah. but you also at a certain point, everybody who is afraid of balloons popping must have had a moment of like, how can I get out of this? Or like how is
I think that moment actually it did shift, and I feel like actually that moment really was actually quite recent when we had that show and tell, because I think that we knew that we were having 500 balloons, but I think that the moment when you actually saw all the balloons on the stage and you were like, and then you started to sort of see them pop one by one throughout the production, not on purpose, but sometimes things are just in the process of blowing them up. I remember looking around the room to the other staff and being like, oh yeah, we have 500 balloons in the festival this year. We're gonna have to figure that one out.
Yeah.
It really brings attention to the body that, like, it's called like Chekhov's gun. It's like that, except the gun is
Yes.
controlled by the random factor, and you never know when it's gonna go off.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I hadn't considered that like tension of like, especially if you are afraid of the sound of balloons popping, just seeing the balloons, especially under theater lights, which heats up the inside. Um, oh, what tension. That's amazing. um, I want to take a moment. Now we've talked about Paprika, and I want to talk about each of you, um, just for a moment. We've sort of talked about Amanda, your performing, your writing, and between a walk and a hot pot. Um, in terms of your journey, your theater journey, now that you're sort of you're not just dipping your toes, you're like waist deep in in theater admin. How do you think that relates to um, the work that you've done in the past and the work that you will do in the future?
That's a really good question. I mean, something that's exciting to me about like being new to Paprika this year is I think especially with COVID and like being at that kind of like early to mid 20s age, when COVID was happening, I was having a really hard time imagining any sort of future. Like I could barely imagine what a week forward would look like, let alone a year. And I never knew where I was gonna end up a year from now, which I think, like, it was nice because during that period, I was kind of just seeing where life was taking me and being open to lots of different opportunities and, like, also, I think really growing outside of my career, which was very much needed. But taking on this role at Paprika, I've signed a 2-year contract. So this is, like, one of the first times in a while that I've been like, "Oh, I think I have, like, an idea of where I'll be a year from now." It'll be getting ready for the 25th anniversary of Paprika. And that like stability has been really nice. And I think has also allowed me to start reflecting more on like where I want to go next in terms of my life, but also my artistic career. So that stability has been really nice. And I think also just the shift into like kind of a more a leadership role, which I think I graduating university, I was like, I want to be an artistic director. And then during COVID, I like looked around at how hard all the artistic directors were working. And I was like, I don't want that for myself. So Paprika, like honestly really opens things up. And I honestly probably wouldn't have applied if the program changes hadn't happened. But seeing that this company was like cared enough about the well-being of their staff, like the arts administrators that, as you said, Phil, are like often like not like forgotten about in terms of like thinking about labor. Like seeing that Paprika cared about that and was willing to like take some sort of risk to be able to protect like these people's energy, that was like, okay, that's the kind of company that I want to invest in. I don't know if that answered your question at all.
No, absolutely, absolutely. It's interesting because that whole COVID era, I think all of us, whatever stage we are at in our theater lives, have watched people or been people who work 1 to 2 jobs, if not more, every night, go to some event, which is some form of networking or play reading or something, and never stop moving. And the one thing that I think COVID did for people who were able to sort of take it on was to be able to be like, oh, who am I when I'm not doing all of those things? Who
100.
am I outside of that? And I think that's an important lesson that I almost would wonder if the programming changes to Paprika could have happened without that pause and with the stopping of the hamster wheel.
I think it's a really interesting question because I definitely feel that there was the whole process of determining like how to think about the changes at Paprika and how we could make a shift and do something was really heavily influenced by like pretty rigorous community consultation. It wasn't something that we felt comfortable being able to make a decision on behalf of a 24 at the time 23-year-old company when we'd really been there for you know 3 or so years doing the things. And so when we asked our community, we asked like if they felt, similarly about the struggles of Paprika, or if they felt like we were doing things great, no changes needed, everything just keep swimming along. And a lot of that really informed the direction, and the changes that we made was based off of like what the community who had been through Paprika had seen it from the outside, been supporting it for years, felt. And so it's hard to say because, a lot of people's public opinion was that, we need to be able to have a certain amount of work-life balance, but also we need to like heavily invest in the folks that like we're working with and we're dealing with. And that's one of the other things that these program changes allowed us to do. It not only allowed us to like reinvest in like our administrative side, but also like we increased all of like the supports that we were giving to the artists by like 50% across or more across the board in terms of all the supports we were giving them. So it's one of those things that like it seemed like it was going to be a win-win-win from our perspective, but at the same time, when you see it from an outside perspective, it's scary to question whether or not they're going to see it and say, but you're slashing everything. You're
Yeah.
cutting everything by half, even though we know that by doing less, we're actually doing more. It was hard to see whether or not folks were going to see that from the outside, but before we even made this change, folks were saying, no, this is the type of change that we want to see from you. We want you to be like well supported, well invested, well funded, well cared for. That's the things that our community wanted from us. And it's hard to say whether they would have felt that way if everybody hadn't been forced to pause and really invest in themselves for a while there, It's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
I mean, it's certainly an interesting question. And I mean, I think we only have speculation, but it does kind of sound like everybody having to get off the hamster wheel made everybody realize, oh, wait, having time is a good thing.
I think getting off the hamster wheel and feeling how that felt to like not be 100% of energy into work, getting back on the hamster wheel, you had this feeling of like, oh, wait, this isn't quite right. Like maybe it doesn't need to be like this. And I think that like going back to what Julie was saying at the very beginning of like emerging artists come in with this fresh perspective. Like I think a lot of the people entering Paprika, because they don't have this like preconceived notion of how hard you're supposed to work and grind to succeed in theater, they're able to look at this industry and be like, well, why would I do that? Like why would I like ruin my mental health, ruin my physical health, and ruin my relationships for this thing that's not like paying me very well? So I think that this is really pushing forward the industry in terms of just like demanding like better labor practices, better pay, better working conditions for folks.
Yeah. I mean, all very important things, and ones that in the historically thinking, um, independent theater artists have not been great at pushing for themselves. So again, kudos to Paprika for making those changes. Um, Julia, I can't remember if the last time you were here we talked about your theater journey, but I'm curious um, uh, about what you were studying when you were at university. Was arts administration always the thing that you wanted to do, or did you find that after the fact?
I think I definitely found it really right at the tail end of that university journey. When I went into university, I was fully convinced that I was going to come out of it and be a kindergarten teacher. That was when I went in with like the biggest hopeful for it. And I studied concurrent education, which means that you get your teacher's college degree at the same time as an undergraduate degree. And I realized throughout the process of doing both at once that like I was having so much more fun when I was working in the theater department and doing work. And, it wasn't entirely arts administration. Actually, I don't think I really started to dabble into the world of like producing and management until around like my third year or so. And then I realized, there's something here in that, mainly because I really love the process of like artistic creation, seeing things come from the beginning to the end. I love the being in the room and being a part of that excitement. But it was never, to me, I was never particularly picky about what I did. Like I was like, just get me in there, like let me at it, and I am going to be so thrilled. And that was the sort of attitude which, if you're familiar with having that attitude, very quickly just leads to people saying, okay, so will you handle my money? Because I don't I don't want to touch that with like a 10-foot pole. And I said, okay, sure, I could probably figure it out. And then I figured out really quickly, I was like, oh no, there's something really fascinating here with like this aspect of like planning, problem solving, like facilitating schedules. It's really clicked for a place in my brain. But at that time, I didn't really necessarily think that it was totally a thing. Like I wasn't totally aware that this was something that I could actually do as a career until really I had finished my program. I finished the teachers college aspect of it too, and realized, no, there's people out there who like run theater companies, who like do the behind the scenes aspect of it. And so and not being sure how to get there, honestly, I said more school, because apparently that was my only real solution to that problem. I went to Humber College and did their arts administration and cultural management program. And that was the one where I was like, oh yeah, like there's a lot of different areas and aspects to arts administration that I can get into. And led me down the development rabbit hole, which again, if it's not how can you handle my money, it's how can you make me money. Those are the two questions that folks will always ask you. And I found, I like doing it. So here we are.
Yeah. Amanda, what were you studying when you were at university? Were you studying theater, or was it something else?
I was not. I was studying psychology. I have a psychology major. My mom's a psychologist. I thought I'd follow in her footsteps. She's still trying to convince me to return. And who knows? But I was similar to Julia. Like I was spending so much time in the theater department, so much so that like if I talk to some of my friends now, they forget that I wasn't a theater major. Like when I went, I was so sad because when it was time to graduate, all of my friends were like in a completely different convocation than me, and I'd been spending all this time with them. But I think that like that's something interesting that like that connects Julia and I to Paprika, is that we both came at to theater from like a very non-traditional route. Neither of us did a theater conservatory or have like a full theater degree. And a lot of the people that find themselves at Paprika are often like have a similar route to that. So it's been really cool to get to support those people's journeys. Folks that for whatever reason, like either didn't choose to do a theater program or like couldn't for whatever reason, are able to still like emerge at any age at Paprika. And that's been really exciting.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing where I think a lot of people who are in the industry think about, oh yes, so what you do to get a career, you go to theater school of some kind, and then you leave and you do this. But again, that's not everybody's path, and you can still come into the industry without theater school. You can still create a show without theater school, and there are plenty of opportunities like Paprika to be able to make that happen. Um, without Paprika, a lot of is it safe to say that a lot of these folks would not be making theater or being able to do the thing they're doing?
I think that people who have like these creative urges and impulses will find a way, like in like the metaphor of like
That's a fact. Yes.
concrete and like a flower coming up. But I just think it would be less well supported. Like I think that Paprika still provides like a very important like contribution to the industry of like helping these people come into the industry. Again, like we were saying earlier, like showing them what they deserve, how they deserve to be treated and paid. And like also bringing attention to these people. Like I think that a big need that Paprika serves as well is like showing like theater companies and like emerged artists, like, hey, here's who you might want to pay attention to. Like here's who's going to be coming up soon. And so we spend a lot of time like before the festival emailing everybody, like, hey, come check out these people. Like they are making really cool things, and you're going to be seeing a lot of them soon. So I don't think it would be that they
Yeah.
don't exist. It's just that they would be there'd be less support for them.
Yeah, I would agree with that sentiment, and I would also just add that I think that even to this day, I get so surprised by like the way that Paprika has just sort of like permeated itself through the sector. So although I don't necessarily think that like these folks couldn't do it without Paprika, they're so talented. They've got good like things going for them. That's part of the reason why we get excited to support them, because we see that and say, well, you have like the impulse, you have the instinct. Let's like help get you out there. Let's help like make it happen, get supported, give you some extra resources and folks to talk to really kind of like narrow in on these ideas. The same way that like any other sort of theater program would have seen potential and bringing it out there. But I think what makes it like clear to me Paprika's importance in the sector is like when I have a conversation with someone and I let them know that I'm the general manager and they go, "Oh yeah, I did that program, like 20 so years ago or 15 years ago, I was doing this." Or like, "Oh, I was a guest artist or whatever. And then I ended up facilitating the program the year after. Like, I don't think I'd be where I was if it wasn't for that." And it's always those conversations where I'm like, "Oh, I had no idea that that was like a part of your journey." Because for so many of these people, that's really what it is. It's like it's a part. You get in there, you get your foot in the door, and then you get to explode and continue to do all these wonderful things for the Toronto theater scene. That's what makes it so special.
I think, just as as both of you are talking, I'm thinking about um, how the idea that people deserve to be paid for their time is, especially in a world where a lot of people, like you were talking about how it used to be with, it's almost like Fringe, and so you like bring in your friends and nobody's getting paid. But if you are an emerging artist and somebody's like, no, you deserve to be paid and we're going to do it, that changes your how you look at theater moving forward. That changes how you approach things moving forward. And I think it's so important that people recognize that, oh wait, just because I'm an independent artist, that doesn't mean that I don't deserve to be paid for my work. So I think that's an amazing. In addition to everything else that's being given to the artists in Paprika, that is an amazing gift as well.
Yeah, and I think that it's something else I feel like worth mentioning is in order to, if you're saying like, let's say you want to do it on your own, like you're going to get out there and you're going to, apply for grants, you're going to just like self fund this thing. To get a lot of grants and like funding material within like this ecosystem that we have, you have to be a professional artist. Like you have to have some documented body of work. So if again, it's that question of like, how do you even get your foot in the door if, for instance, if Paprika wasn't like a paid opportunity, if we were just a theater school, this wouldn't actually, for instance, give the same people like the oomph that they need to then say like, oh, I am a professional paid artist. Like I've gotten paid to do my work and present it within a professional organization. Now I can apply for the grants that allow me to like better support other artists in the future. It's like a ripple effect also in terms of like you empower artists to be able to empower other artists. And I think that that's a really important thing in our ecology. Otherwise, it's just going to be saying, well, how are we getting these folks in the door at all? If they have to be professionals to do their own work, they have to be professionals to get hired by a company. How are we getting professionals in the industry?
Yeah, and not only that, but also like the if we say we care about like having a more diverse industry that includes people like of all backgrounds, races, like sexualities, genders, then like we have to recognize that like people don't have equal access to the industry and not everybody has an equal opportunity to work for free or to like spend time like learning how to write a grant. So I think that Paprika serves a really important function in that like we help diversify the industry by providing people who might not be able to access the industry on their own with an ability like an inroad. And I think that that's been like really really exciting to see at Paprika.
So the Paprika Festival runs from May 13th to 17th at Aki Studio in Toronto. Aside from the shows, which you've both done an amazing job of selling us on, selling me on in particular, what are you most looking forward to about this year's festival?
Speaking as the person who hasn't been like dreaming and scheming it up as much, I am personally really excited about the beautiful community programming that Amanda and Rose, our associate festival producer, have been scheming up. There's some really exciting things. There's a drag show that's happening on our opening night. There's like an application, an audition clinic. If you're the sort of person that like just wants to figure out like how to get your work out there, and maybe you're the sort of person that's just like, I feel like I keep getting no's and I don't understand why because nobody will tell me why. One of those infuriating parts of like trying to put yourself out there. Like we have opportunities to actually get the feedback from the folks who do the reviewing of auditions and applications and things like that. That's just like and also we have a Paprika prom. We just are having a dance to close ourselves out. That one makes me giggle. I love it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Amanda, how about you?
I'm all those things, and thank you, Julia, for complimenting the community programming. I feel like I can't do that myself. Something that I'm really excited about is we're bringing back an event from last year, which was the neighborhood lemonade stand. I think we've been at Aki Studio and Daniel Spectrum in Regent Park. I think this is like our eighth year, ninth year.
8th year if you don't count the fact that we had 2 years that we couldn't be there because of.
So we've been in this neighborhood for a while. So it's always really great to like, I think that this event last year did a really good job of like helping us meet our neighbors. Like obviously we're only there 2 weeks a year. So it's like we're going to have pay what you can bike repairs. We're going to have a clothing swap. We're going to be giving out free pink lemonade. So I think I'm really excited for that and getting to connect to some of our neighbors in Regent Park.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think that any kind of outreach that theaters can do is amazing because you need to bring in the people who aren't always going to theater. That's how theater grows. That's how theater thrives. And whatever ways that we can get out and connect with people is a great way to do it. So again, kudos to you and to Paprika for making those things happen. Amanda, Julia, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you giving me the time today and super looking forward to the Paprika Festival this year.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. Hope you're able to make it out.